Last night, the EIS, which is Scotland's teachers' union, instructed all their members how to combat the far right, how to indoctrinate kids, and made some absolutely ridiculous claims that they want their members to put into our kids' heads. Now, this document was released last night. I was sent a copy. I went through it this morning, and I'm going to highlight some of the outrageous claims, the total contradictions, and the biggest, most scary bit at the end, which is the instruction they've given to indoctrinate your children. Now, this just beggars belief. Do you know what I mean? I've stood at protests. One that stands in my mind was talking at a protest in Manchester, which was all about child protection. And we had unions there for teachers unions in England, counter-protesting a protest that was about child safety. It had victims of child abuse talking while they countered it. And this is just getting ridiculous, right? The trade unions have lost the plot. But this, as far as Scotland's concerned, must be one of the biggest idiotic examples of what these people think should be normal, okay? So I'm going to go through the document. I'm not going through the 16 pages. I've picked out half a dozen things that are completely bonkers. And I'll put a link, as I say, in the comments so others can go and have a look, and they might find things that are equally or more idiotic to them in their personal things, right? So one of the comments now, it talks about economic insecurity. This bit, coming from a place that wants to improve society, this bit blows my mind. It says, rising inequality, insecure work and declining living standards create fertile ground for the far-right narratives. People facing hardship are more vulnerable to arguments that outsiders are to blame, or that a return to traditional culture or family values will provide solutions. So what they're actually saying here is, a return to traditional culture or family roles will not provide the solutions, because they're saying that's what the far right do, and that's wrong. You with me? This is school teachers. This has been given to school teachers to accept that traditional culture and family roles will not sort out any of the declining living standards that we see in the United Kingdom. So families are not important, nor is your traditional cultures. Every other culture is important because we have to embrace it. Yeah, we keep getting told, but your own, that's not important. And family values, they won't work either. This is teachers that are getting told this, right? But the scary bit's at the end. The next thing, far-right ideologies, strongly rooted in patriarchal ideas, inter alia, which frame gender and gender roles as determined by biology. So what they're telling us is gender is not determined by our biology. Well, I've got news for you. The biggest court in the land told us a mere few months ago that it kind of does. That's all that you need to know, is biology does determine your gender, okay? But these people, nah, we're not going to accept that. We're going to ignore science and ignore the law. And we are going to, as a union, are telling our teachers, this is fact, and this is what they've to, the scary bit at the end, where they tell you what to do with kids, right? Absolute bonkers, a lot of them. Right, the third thing, we're witnessing a coup against democracy. So they believe democracy is in danger by a sustained assault by state authorities, the corporate underminers of democracy on the right and welfare of workers. Increasingly, this attack is orchestrated by far-right demagogues backed by billionaires who are determined to reshape the world in their own interests at the expense of ordinary working people. You could be describing WEF, United Nations, all these other bodies that want us all to be basically communists, right? You actually can't see what you're describing are the people who are actually controlling the right, the left and the far left, right? This complete ignorance of the situation is mind-blowing for a union, for all the teachers in Scotland, right? You can see this one's got to me. The EIS is not affiliated to, so they're telling us democracy is at risk, right? This is key, these two are kind of linked. EIS is not affiliated with any political party but it does engage with all mainstream parliamentary parties in Scotland in hustings and other engagements. The latest AGM resolved to exclude reform from any hustings and thus part of the concerted strategy of opposing the far right. Now, for watchers of my videos and people that follow me on social media, I'm no fan of reform. But what I will stand up for is their right. They do have, whether you like it or not, MSPs in the place just now because somebody jumped to them. But they have to be excluded from democracy. Bear in mind, your last thing was telling us how these billionaires all across the world are attacking democracy by infiltrating the far right. You're trying to infiltrate the democracy and deny democracy by the mere statement that you're admitting that you're going to exclude certain parties from your form of democracy, which isn't democracy, you absolute half-wits. The next one's one of my personal favourites. Now, bear in mind this is a union who should be fighting for the rights of the workers that union represents. They tell you common aspects of far-right ideologies that are fundamentally opposed to trade unionism include being pro-business and pro-wealth, in that they seek low regulation, and here's a kicker, low taxation. That is opposed to trade unionism, apparently. So the trade union, or this particular trade union, feel that low taxes is a bad thing for the trade union movement, which is there to safeguard employees who they want to pay higher taxes. Do these people leave their common sense and logic at the door when they write this shite? Because this is just bonkers. And I'm not finished. I've got 3 more slides, and the best one's at the end. Actually, the worst one. It's a better terminology. So where they are from and where they are going. Now, this bit is where they start talking about migration or asylum seekers, to be more specific. In fact, better tell you their definition of an asylum seeker first, because that's kind of key to, what they're going to talk. An asylum seeker is someone who has fled their home due to fear of persecution and applied for protection in another country, but has not yet been granted refugee status. That's kind of true. I'll come to why that's not always true in a minute. But what they say is, they say the top 5 countries from which people seek asylum can come into the UK: Pakistan, Afghanistan, Iran, Eritrea, and Bangladesh. Now, there's only 2 of them that I can possibly consider should be running, anybody would potentially be leaving for fear of persecution, and that would be Afghanistan and Iran. Now, I'm not too up on Eritrea, geopolitics of Eritrea, right? So I'll put a question mark next to that one. But Pakistan and Bangladesh are in the top 5 places that people claim asylum from into the UK. But you're telling us that they're fleeing for persecution and obviously war and stuff like that, right? A lot of nonsense. And ironically, the top 5 host countries in the world to receive asylum seekers, one of them's Iran, which is also in the top 5 for people coming here. Which kind of contradicts the whole thing that they're running away from bad things, because it is the biggest host country for asylum seekers in the world. So loads of people are going to Iran. Are you with me? That's a contradiction. But this whole thing about, that's what they're doing when they apply for asylum. Well, I've got news for you. My own personal experiences. I went to Lesbos, which is one of the biggest routes into the EU, myself alone, to look and say, what is going on here? I want to understand this better. And I spoke to people in the camps. Once they apply for asylum, when they come in to the EU, which is normally Greek islands, some islands in Spain, or Lampedusa, which is an Italian island, or some of them Malta now. Once they're there and they get asylum, they've got asylum. And then they give them a travel pass, which allows them free passage in the Schengen zone. And that's when they get to the north of France and inevitably coming to Britain, which is one of the main attractions of coming to Europe, is to get to the UK. Now, here's a kicker. I know it because I've been, I've seen, I've spoke, I've interviewed people in this process at the gates of the EU in Lesbos. And they grant them asylum, or they wouldn't have the travel document to enable them to get to the mainland, to enable them to get to the north of France. It is illegal to even apply for asylum twice. Once you have, well, you can apply twice if you get knocked back for the first place, right? But as soon as you've been accepted and given refuge, it is then illegal to claim asylum elsewhere. Now, our unions, our judiciary, our government must know this. If me, jumped in a plane, a couple of £100 out to there, could find this out, I could actually have found it out by no going. But it was through talking to people there, so it was a worthwhile trip. I stumbled across this thing. So they're not fleeing anywhere. They've been granted asylum and refuge in the country of entry when they come into the EU. If they weren't, they would be unable to travel because they wouldn't have a refugee document to allow them to travel across the Schengen zone. Please wake up. But that's it. Now the biggest one, I've kept the best, the worst to last. This is the bit that shocked me, right? And I thought, no, I need to do a video on this. Schools, colleges and universities. This, bear in mind, is an instruction from this teachers' union in Scotland to their members, who are teachers, right? Schools, colleges and universities need to be anchors in our communities as focal points for fighting far-right narratives and promoting integration and community development. This means, listen, having difficult conversations with staff and students. Now, so all that stuff, by the way, I've only been through, I've lifted, what, half a dozen examples out of a 16-page document. There's hundreds of them. These are just the ones that I kind of wanted to pull my hair that I've not got out of my head, right? You might have others once you read the document. And what they're now telling the teachers on Scotland, you need to go and tell our students about this, all this stuff that we've just gave you in this document. They are there to teach children, not to indoctrinate them into any ideology, good, bad, or indifferent. But this is shocking. This needs to stop. Who the hell do these people think they are to tell us that, let's just go through it, family role will not provide solutions to our existing problems. Gender, it cannot be identified by biology. Only the right try to infiltrate the state. We've to have democracy, but we've not to let all the parties in. Low taxes is bad. And asylum seekers are all fleeing persecution. And every one of those comments is total bollocks. If you want others to see this video, click the thumbs up, put your comments below, hit the share button. If you've not already done so, or you even think you have, double check you're on the subscribe list. Please hit the subscribe, it does wonders for the channel. But more important than all that, unless you're the type of despicable person who forces this on your members as a trade union, which is not your role is to look after them, and demands that your members, who are teachers, indoctrinate our children, then not you. But everyone else, have a great day. Cheery bye now.